Welcome back on Untitled. Today I want to propose you a video about the review about the temporary supplement Codex of the Blood Angels for the 2020, released the 5 October 2020 by the Games Workshop. The new supplement, the real one, they will be released in November 2020. So for now, this will be the one that we are going to consider about the Blood Angels itself. So now we are going to analyze all the contents inside here and diving a sight of what there is. And about this part of the rules, it's simply saying that the Codex of the Blood Angels and the supplement of Blood of Baal, so these ones, are not more available for the use of the rules, so only for the background goes. Now this is valid till the releasing about the new Codex, or better, the new supplement of the Blood Angels in the November 2020, as I said, and you have to combine this with this one. So the new Codex of the Space Marines, because here are the base of the rules and the units that then you can adjust with these ones, 23 pages of things. So pay attention about such detail because it's important. If you don't have this, you almost can't play with this. Okay, you can if you want, but it's not complete, so pay attention about such. Anyway, I want to remember you that in the description there is the playlist with all the focuses about the rules, about the Codex of Space Marines, included in the playlist about the Blood Angels too, so eventually you can use them and see them all together. And remember also to see the ones about the 9th edition, obviously. And so we can see what there is here, and in the first part here we can find these parts that are about the contents inside. About the successor chapters there are some important things, and it's, for example, the part about the relics of Baal. This it's important because it says that the successor chapters of the Blood Angels can't have the relics, the artifacts of the Blood Angels themselves. So you can have technically, because there is a stratagem that allows you, but still you have to remember that there are some limitations about. And about this part, as you can see, it's about seeing what is defined as Blood Angels detachment, and the rules here that we are seeing yet previously, that it's Savage Echoes, that it's that whilst the assault routine is active, if a unit with this ability makes a charge move, is charged or perform a heroic intervention, so the usual one, then of the shock assault, then add 1 to the attack characteristic models in that unit until the end of the turn. That is cumulative with the shock assault bonus. So it means that you can gain 2 attacks instead of only 1. So remember about the rules for the shock assault, and if you are in the assault doctrine, you can gain quite a lot. Eventually remember that there are ways to make that even if you're not in the assault doctrine, you can gain that effect. So remember about such, because it's really quite important to gain a lot of attacks for your army. Then we can flip and we can find about the stratagems that are available for the Blood Angels. And about this we have Refusal to Die, that it's a way to give to the Death Company units a final pain of 5+ instead of the 6+. Here Honored by Baal, that it's the way that I talked about before, about giving to a character from not a Blood Angels chapter but a successor of the Blood Angels chapter a relic from Baal. Here we have Unbridled Ardor, that it's for free command point. It lets you use a Blood Angels unit from your army and then make an heroic intervention even if there are not a character. So it's really quite important, and it's a 6-inch of heroic intervention, quite interesting. And then we have Explosive Judgment, that make that in the shooting phase you can select 1 Sanguinary Guard, and you can, until the end of the phase, when resolving an attack made with an Angel's Bolt Gun by a model in that unit, reroll the wound roll and the target receives no benefits for the cover. So it can be quite interesting if you're going to play the Sanguinary Guard, because at least you can have a bonus to that. And for 1 command point it can be useful, so eventually you can think about such. Then we can move to see the next one, that are the relics of Baal. In this case, we can see the ones that are related about the Blood Angel specific ones. We can find the first, that it's a weapon, the Decimator, that it goes to substitute a Mastercraft auto-bolt rifle, and it has a 24-inch assault 3, strength 5, penetration 2 and 2 damage. And when suffering an attack made with this weapon, the bearer does not suffer the penalties from advancing and firing assault weapons. So you don't have the penalties to make the advance. So it can be useful, since I don't find it so great, but can be quite interesting. What is interesting instead, it's Wrath of Baal, that for the Unsanguinary Ancient only, so only that model, but it make that you can add 2 to the bearer's move characteristic, and then the bearer has the Wrath of Baal aura, so a range that within 6 inch, it makes that the Blood Angels jump perk core units can make the same, so they make that at the start of the move phase until the end of that phase, so you have to be at the beginning within the range of that model, and then you can add 2 to the move characteristic of the models in that unit, so then you can move them aside, but still they gain 2 inch to the movement. And considering that you have also a bonus to the charge, because the rules of the Blood Angels and cells that you can find in the Codex of the Space Marines 2020, it means that you can gain quite a lot of range to charge eventually, and jump up and jump back core units has also a nice movement, so it's not bad. Then we have Yomantic Sarcophagus, that let you add 6 to the range of the psychic power of the model that manifests it. It can be used only by the Liberation Dreadnought, remember, and once per turn, when a psychic test or the Night Witch test is taken for this model, you can reroll 1 of the dice, so it can be really quite interesting. And then we have Figure of Death, that make that if the model has a Crucius Arcanum, so only the chaplains, then you can replace it, and this has a +2 to strength, a penetration 2 and 2 damage. And when resolving an attack made with this weapon on a successful wound roll target, the target is terrified, and until the end of that turn, in addition to any normal damage which this unit is terrified, subtract 2 from the leadership characteristic of the models in that unit. So it's a way to make them fail easier the moral test, so it's not so bad. And then we have Gleaming Pinions, that can be used only by Jump-X units, combat models, and the bearer is eligible to declare a charge during a turn in which it fell back, and add 1 to the charge rolls made for the bearer. So it becomes really quite interesting, because it means that it has a charge of +2, and it's not bad at all. Really, we have some of these that can be quite useful. Obviously, it depends by how you want to make them, personalizing your own army. Eventually, remember that you have also the artifact from the Codex of Space Marine available, and the War Gear that we will see quite soon. Then we can move to the issue War Gear special one, that you can give without problems to both Blood Angels and successor chapters. We had the Adamantium Mantle, that it's technically a Fin No Pain of 5+. Then we had the Artificial Armor, that is a 2+ save armor and 5+ invulnerable save, so like a Terminator armor but on a normal armor. Quake Bolts, that you can associate to a bolt weapon of the model, and in the case that you target an opponent, you can choose to give the special rule, so or shoot normally or the other way. If you choose to use the Quick Bolts, you have only 1 hit to do, and if successfully, you terrify the enemy. It means that you can continue to wound normally with your shoot, about that one that you've done, but then when you go in the melee parts, when resolving an attack with such rule applied, so the terrified unit, then you can add 1 to the hit roll. So this is perfect associated with a bolt pistol, because it means that you can do this also in close combat, so almost always gain the bonus eventually. Then we have the Mastercraft Weapon, that it can be used on a weapon that mod is equipped with, not mind if it's shooting or melee, but it has not to be yet a mastercrafted one. And then in such a way you can make that you can add 1 to that characteristic damage. Then we have the digital weapons, that it makes that you can make an additional attack using this combat weapon profile, and when solving that attack, if a hit is scored, then the target suffers 1 mortal wound and the attack sequence ends. So it's a way to make a hitting single attack one that makes a mortal wound. Then we have the flash grader grenades, and these are grenade free, 6-inch, that it's quite short anyway. Then we have a strength of 5, penetration free, and 2 damage. And when resolving an attack made with this weapon, the target does not receive the benefit of the cover for its throwing save. So it's quite interesting because it means that it's almost in some situation having a penetration of 4 or eventually of 5. So it's quite interesting. Okay, the range is quite short but quite interesting. And then we have the icon of the angel, that the bear has the ability that it's an aura, so it has a range, and it applies to the Blood Angels core units or units with the same successor chapter keyword and so on, so it's always the same, that is within 3 inches of that model. Each time a charge roll is made for that unit, you can re-roll any of the dice. So it's quite interesting to re-roll the charge, and so it's like having an effect that you can gain from psychic powers or from some litanies, so not bad at all. And then we can see the part about the flash dealers. I want to remind you that about the chapter tactics for this successor chapter you can find in the Codex of the Space Marine 2020. And we have the stratagem that one, it's aggressive onslaught, that for 1 command point it lets you that the pile-in moving of the flash dealers unit infantry 1 is 6 inch instead of 3, and savage destruction, that makes that when you kill a model in a unit that you are making a combat with, then that destroyed model it counts as 2 for the purpose of the moral test. So it's a way that you can make the opponent fail easier the moral test. Then had the relics of Carthage with several of the threads, that is a weapon that goes to substitute a chainsword of that model, that gives +1 to strength, a penetration 1 and 1 damage, but it gives the 3 additional attacks, so minimum 1 to a maximum of 3, and when you are going to resolve attacks against an infantry model for the enemy, then on a modified wound roll of 6, it inflicts 1 mortal wound in additional to any other normal damage that you are going to do, so not bad at all. And then one that it's quite amazing, that it's Sorrow Genesis, that let you give this to a sanguinary priest, Primaris Apothecary or Sanguinary Novitiate models, and then this model loses the combat restorative abilities but gain these, so that at the end of the month phase this model can heal 1 friendly flash dealers infantry or biker of the flash dealers within 3 inch, so for now it's the same of the normal ability. And then that unit contains any models that have lost any wounds. Select one of those models to regain up to 3 lost wounds. So it means that up till now it's like having the valor trait of the Chief Apothecary, and in addition you can, otherwise, if any models from that unit has been destroyed, on a roll on a d6 on a 2+, you can return 1 destroyed model for that unit on the battlefield with 3 wound lost regained, placing it within 3 inch of this model and in unit coherency. Each unit can only be healed once per turn and can only be affected by this Sorrow Genesis once per turn. So it's quite amazing. Once, because you can eventually make that you can have that you can combine an apothecary of this one and make a Chief Apothecary to gain even more bonuses. Second, because you can have this option and more, you can use the stratagem from the Codex of the Space Marine 2020 to make it come back another one. So amazing. So eventually think about this because if you're going to play the Flesh, it's a great bonus to think about. And then we can see the datasheets, and the main part about this, about the abilities that are explained here, it's that there has been a change about the Black Rage. Now, with the Black Rage, the unit that has such rule in the multi phase cannot make a fallback. It's okay, because at least you are not forced to make some movement toward the enemy. Then we had that each time this unit fight, it made a charge move or performed a heroic intervention this turn. Then it add 1 to the attack characteristic, and if you add this to the shock assault and to the eventually option that you can gain with this, the Savage Echoes, if it's the combat doctrine active, so it means that you can gain quite a lot of attacks with such unit. And then there is the Feel No Pain at 6, that it's always okay. And remember that it cannot perform any action, and it's okay because as it can fall back, considering the nature of such units, it's good that such unit with such rules doesn't have these options. Anyway, you have to remember them. So we can move on. Here we can find about the chapter master of the Blood Angels and the Flesh Tearers. In particular, I want to remind you that they doesn't gain the same bonuses of the chapter masters of the Codex of the Space Marines, so you have to pay attention about this. But about Commander Dante, at least we are not so bad, because it gains 1 command point before the battle start, and it can make that once per battle. 1 epic deed type stratagem, it costs 0 command point, so in some way it's like having 2 command points freely, so at least there is such option, something that set doesn't have. But they are really quite interesting. At least Dante this time is more interesting about strategic and has some rules that improve its abilities in some way, so it's better now finally. Okay, it's not still anyway quite good. One thing that at least makes me satisfied is that the Axe Mortalis it's improved compared to before, and it's finally a good weapon for a chapter master, at least that. And then we have the Sanguinor, that it's always nice, and the Brother Corbulo, that is the chief apothecary about the Blood Angels. In this case, what makes me being a bit not satisfied, it's the Red Grail, because it's an aura, so it's as it's written seem to force the unit to gain such ability, that it's to make that the assault routine is considered to be active for that attack instead of the normal ones, and not only when it combat, but only being within 6 inch. Can be quite good, but only if you are planning to go against the other units in close combat or use pistols, so you have to pay attention where you put this one. So I think that to be the apothecary chief, it's a bit decreasing its power, even if for the rest it's a good one, so we have to pay a bit of attention about. Anyway, it's a model that you can try to consider because it can be quite interesting, but sincerely I prefer a normal apothecary or eventually promote a chief apothecary than using this one, so we had to decide which one we prefer. And then we have the Sanguinary Priest, that in some way I find it much better, because it lets you have the Blood Chalice, and this Blood Chalice can be quite good because it lets you select any friendly Bloodcore units or characters to give the bonus that we have seen before about gaining the Assault Doctrine. And in the case that you don't want that it gains something special, you can target itself. So at least it's a way to bypass such limit, because it can be an improving quite a lot, but also it doesn't force, and anyway, because it can have only the bolt pistol, it can gain the bonus anyway, so it can be quite good. So sincerely I prefer in this case the Sanguinary Priest, and I think that is better, moreover because it can have the jump pack, so it means that it's faster to move on the field, and so bring the rules that it has everything that where it's needed. So much better. Then we had Chief Librarian Mephiston, that it's practically the same that we've seen before, so that doesn't change much. And then we can move. Then we had the Librarian Dreadnought, and this one, sincerely, I suggest you to make this become, if you're going to play a successor chapter, the Chief Librarian, because you can gain quite a lot of interesting things available as artifact, as word of treat, and so on. So I think that can be quite good. Then we have Astorath, that it's almost you had to like to play this. I like a lot the model of this, but not the background of such model. I never liked. Lemartes, that to make it really value, you have to associate this with the Death Company. Then we have Captain Tycho and Tycho the Lost, that are really quite interesting. Sincerely, I think about playing them because they can be really quite amazing ones. So give a read about these because they can be interesting. Then we had the Sanguinary Guard, that it's almost as the usage, but at least now the rule about the Angelic Visage is always available. So at least now it's more useful in close combat without having to pay extra points. Then we had the Sanguinary Ancient, that it's always a model to take note about, because I want to remember you that it's something that has also access to a specific relic that can be quite interesting. So remember about this. And anyway, these rules are always good. Then you have the Death Company Dreadnought, and these can be really quite a beast in close combat. The Death Company Marines, that have now 2 wounds, so I think about playing them if you want really to make some assaults. And other than you need the Assault Intercessors Space Marines, sincerely I'd make a thought about such ones, because they can have also the Jump X. Then we have the Death Company Intercessors, and here you have to understand which one of these are better, because maybe the choosing about the previous one or these ones is related about stratagems more than real, because the other ones, I think that the normal ones of Space Marines Death Company, I think that are a bit better. Then we have the Furious Dreadnought, so that we have something that it's not a beast like the Death Company ones, but it's really adaptable, so you can choose which one you prefer. And then we had the Ball Predator, that it improved quite a lot. And why such? Because we have that, for example, the Ball Flamestorm Cannon, it's 18-inch, and this it's really quite good to have, because it means that it has more range. Moreover, with the actual rules of such vehicles in this edition, it means that in the first one technically has a almost 30-inch of range, because it has 12-inch of movement and 18-inch of this, so can be really quite interesting. So I suggest you to think about such. The Overcharge engine can be quite interesting, but remember that you can shoot, if you do this, only with assault weapons, and it doesn't have assault weapons, so pay attention. Even if you can maybe try something, some playing or so on to try. And then we have the weapon profile that we upgraded, so at least we have something that is specified, and the points that you can simply read by yourself and decide if they are worth or not, and so decide how much you are going to use. So, what to say about such one? I think that to be a temporary one, it's quite amazing. So I suggest you to give a try and decide if you are going to use this as a successor chapter of the Blood Angels or other options. I'm still waiting anyway for the Codex, or better, to the supplement of the Blood Angels, because I want something more. I mean that there are things that are interesting, but there are some things that I'd like adjusted. So you can choose if it's good or not for you. What makes fun about such, anyway, supplement is that technically it's a way to recall a Codex PDF 1, 2 of them, that has been released in 5th edition about the Blood Angels, because they had not a Codex, but only PDF 1. So in some way it's like recalling old memories for me. Anyway, from Dynamod it's everything. I invite you to put a like on this video, to subscribe to the channel, to ring the bell, and to comment this video if you are interested in something about this video or you want to suggest me some arguments for other videos. I hope to see you again. To the next time.